Hi everyone, Claire here, and today I'm going to be sharing how to create this card, and we make accidentally a really cool background. So I made this for Imagine Crafts in 2015 when I was on their Artist in Residence team, and I'm going to be using Versamark, clear embossing powder, Memento in Tuxedo Black, and some Memento felt pens, the fireworks sprays, the Mama Elephant stamp set, which I can't remember the name right now, and a Simon Says Stamp background stamp. So I'm going to go into the details, and here we go. I'm going to start with just a standard 5x7 card, and I've cut a piece of craft card a smidge smaller. I've taken a piece of white card a smidge smaller than that, so I get a nice border, and then I've got a square, which is what I'm going to do my background on. So I'm going to take the standard circles, and that's the Spellbinders S4114, and I'm using the largest circle out of the die cut set, and then I'm just going to roughly by eye see where I want it to go, and I'm going to check because I know which image I'm going to put on the front, so I'm going to check that I've not got it too far over or too small. And then on the smallest piece of card I cut, I'm going to take the Falling Stars stamp by Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to ink it up with Versamark and emboss it with the clear embossing powder. This stamp is actually really large, and I didn't have a block big enough, so I had to tape two together. It was perfectly fine. It gave me a really good image anyway, so long as it works, go ahead and do it. Because it is such a large stamp and mine was quite dirty, oh, that's the embossing powder, the Imagine Crafts Clear. And don't forget your piece of paper to take your excess powder off. But I'm gonna ink up this stamp really well. And my Versamark ink pad was actually quite a new one at the time. Even though it was new and really juicy, I'm still inking it up really well. And do try and line it up so it's straight. It just makes things a lot easier. I do find it easier to use a folded piece of paper when I'm putting my embossing powder on, and I can just pour it off straight onto that, and it saves a big mess on the craft mat. You do need to be careful when you're heating embossing powder. It is possible to overheat them, and they do go really dull and sink into the paper, and it can actually cause a lot of damage to the paper. Sometimes you want that as a look, but in this case I just wanted to set the embossing powder so it's nice and shiny, because stars should be shiny, just like that. So now I'm taking the fireworks sprays, and the colours I'm using are Bahama Blue and Grape Jelly, and I hadn't used these for quite a while, so they needed a really good shake, but they don't have a ball bearing in them, but you just need to keep on shaking and keep on going. And I'm spraying my base with a little bit of water, and then I'm spraying the colours on top and a bit more water, and then I'm going to move it about and get a really cool pattern. The water just helps the colours move, and it gives you a more watercoloured effect. The sprays on their own are really good and they're really well pigmented, but I wanted them a bit more watery and a bit lighter in colour. So I've dried it off a little bit to speed up the process, and then I'm picking up the excess, which also adds a bit of interest to it. So it's not just going to be flat colour, it's going to be all mixed, and of course the fireworks are shiny, so your pieces will be shiny as well. And then I'm just going to buff off any ink off the stars to make sure that it's all good. So next I'm going to take the Tiny Heroes Mama Elephant set and the matching dies as well, and I'm pointing out the ones I'm going to use, and I'm going to ink them up with the Memento Tuxedo Black, and I'm going to heat set them once I've stamped them. So I'm just going to work out here where I'm going to put it, and I thought at first I was going to stamp it to the left, but as I had my stamp hovering, I decided that going to the left wouldn't look so good, and I didn't want to stamp it out wrong because I didn't want to cut another hole out. So I decided to stamp it directly in the middle. And if you want, you could actually measure it and line it up, but the super duper, the space between the words is actually pretty much in the center, so you can pretty much just guesstimate where it's going to go and look good. And I did take a leap of faith and go for it. So I'm going to ink up and stamp the two characters. I've got the cat and the girl, and I'm just going to put them on a piece of scrap paper, and I'm inking them up really well with the Memento. The Mama Elephant stamps are really good quality, so you don't need to worry too much. And then I'm going to heat set my images as well. Make sure that the Memento is dry because I'm going to colour them in with felt tips. Isn't that little kitty cute? He's my favourite from that set, I think. So the shield I decided to do differently, and I'm going to use the Memento markers. I'm using the Ladybug and the Bahama Blue, and I'm going to colour in the stamp and stamp the stamp. And I did do it twice and pick the best one because sometimes they don't always come out perfect because one colour will dry before you've actually finished colouring in the other. So sometimes just be aware, sometimes it's better just to do 2 or 3 just to make sure. I think it took me 2 to get a good one that I decided I wanted to keep. So I'm just carefully, because the Memento I've got the fine tip, they're really easy to get into the detail to stamp it. And it comes out looking really good. So then I'm going to go on with the Memento and I'm going to colour in the images. So I'm using Desert Sand, Bahama Blue, Ladybug, London Fog and the Dandelion. They're not a alcohol marker, they are a water-based marker, but you can't get really cool blended effects with them, but you can colour in pretty decently. And the colours, of course, match the whole Memento range, so long as if you know how to colour in, basically so long as you're even and you put an even amount of colour down, you'll be fine. But if you keep going back and touching up areas, you'll get extra colour, and that's when you start going wrong. You need to just take a leap of faith and have faith in yourself and just do it in one hit. And also going in a circular motion when you're colouring will also make it more smooth and less of a childlike look, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. And you will notice that I keep heat setting the colours, and that's because I'm quite impatient and I want to get onto the next colour. When you're colouring in, you don't want to put one colour next to another while the other colour is still wet, because it will leach colour from the other colour you're using. And I didn't really want to leach any of the blue into her skin tone, because that would be a real bad idea right from the start. I'm not entirely sure why I decided to go with the blue. I'll make her blonde. I think I was kind of doing me, and I really like blue, so it was supposed to be a birthday card for my other half, but it kind of turned out into a card more for me. But she came out great in the end, so, and he loved it. I can't really complain at that. And of course they did the red cape because she's blue, so it has to be like a normal superhero. A well-known one that I won't mention for copyright reasons, but I'm sure you can guess who wears blue and red. I think I picked up a cat hair or something because I did get like a blip on my colouring. So if you end up with something like that, just pull it off and just wipe your nib, and the colour comes off if you get it onto your fingers, so don't worry about it. To make the cat match, I wanted to do him with a red face mask, the same as her, and a gold star and a blue collar to match her blue uniform. And I wasn't really adventurous with the cat, but I could have actually done colours like one of our cats, but I decided that, I'm just going to be pretty boring and just do it flat grey. But he came out looking great anyway, so I was happy with that. So I'm doing the final heat set because I'm going to take the matching dies from the matching die cut set, and then I'm going to carefully cut them out with my Big Shot. Doesn't really take long, and that's just showing you the Memento. The Memento ink won't bleed when you do the Memento markers over the top, which is sometimes what you get if you use certain inks with the alcohol markers, but if you use Memento on Memento it won't make it bleed like that. So just a little tip. So I am putting my dies down with a little bit of washi tape so they don't move when I put them in the die cutting machine, and I have no idea what I'm doing off screen. Sorry about that. So there we go. I'm putting them onto my cutting plate and I'm just lining them up, and there's my head. You do need to look straight down from above on them to make sure that the dies are lined up properly. You can pretty much see easily if they're lined up correctly or wrongly. And I do like to secure them top and bottom so they're less likely to move when they're going through your die cut machine. So there they all are, nicely cut out, and I'm just working out where I'm going to put them. I like to, as I'm going along, I like to make decisions, so if I need to cut anything else out and change it while I'm going along, I can do that. But eventually I settled on pretty much that. I thought it looked cool. So now I'm going to make the shaker element of the card, and I'm not sure entirely what I'm doing, but you can see the really nice shine on that backing paper that we created. So I've got some foam tape, and I did notice straight away that it was a bit wide, and I did also notice that I'd forgotten my acetate. So I am going to roughly cut out a piece of acetate, roughly the size I need, and I do keep the carrier paper on the back, which helps you get less static, and the last thing that you want on a shaker card is static, especially if you're using glitter. So I'm going to stick the acetate down with the ATG gun, and I have the pink one and the yellow one because the pink one is a thin strip and the yellow one is a really wide strip. I think it's over an inch wide, the yellow one, and the pink one is about half a centimetre, something like that. I really like both, and both really have a good use. There is an appropriate situation for both. Sometimes you need the wider strip, but in this case I needed the thinner. So I'm just adding my acetate on and then burnishing it down with my fingernail. And then I'm going to cut off the excess acetate because I need the foam to stick. And to be honest, my foam was really crap. It's a pound shop, and you do have to add extra glue to make sure it sticks for a long time. So I usually just put on some a thin bead of Scotch quick dry adhesive, which is my go-to adhesive. So now I'm going to build around the foam, all around the outside edge, and I'm going to press it from both sides because I find it easier to make sure that you've actually got a good bond. And my tape was too wide, so I'm just going to cut it down. It doesn't harm your tape cutting it down at all, and if you get any of the goop on your scissors, they just usually wipe off with a baby wipe, especially from the really cheap ones. Oh, Kitten! Tiger's here, she wants her tea. So now I'm going to put some supporting pieces in, and I decided that it was too large, but I do want it supported for you know, if it goes through the post, so I do need to support any of them spaces. So I'm going to start also building my wall around the actual shaker. So as I was saying before, the shaker needs to be built where you haven't got much of a gap between the space and the cavity behind, because if you have too much of a gap, all of the glitter that you put in will disappear and you'll be wasting a lot of glitter. So what you actually need to do is make sure that all of your foam tape touches and butts together really well, as you can see I'm doing there. And I'm butting it together really well so that any of the glitter won't escape into the cavity that you don't see. So it's really easy to do. You just need to push your tape up against the side and then stick it down. It's really quite a simple process, but I'm going quite close, you can see, to the white of the circle, and that's exactly what you need to do. It needs to be really, really, really close. So I'm going to turn it over and press down, really make sure that all of that foam tape is really well stuck down. And then I'm going to add my glitter into the shaker. So in this case I've used some quite large glittery stars, and I actually took them from my mum's stash, and they are, I think they were from Wilkinson's or something. She's had them for a few years, she's never used them, so I thought they were fair game, to be fair. So I'm going to pull the tape off now. I'm ready. I've decided I've put in enough stars, and you can see that if I hadn't have blocked off all of that bottom section, all of them stars would fall straight down and then they'd be wasted. So this is why you put in such a big border. It's to make sure that you're not wasting your actual glitter, even though there's loads of it, but you know, you need it to show. So once I've pulled all of the tape off, I'm going to go around the foam. Like I said, it is rubbish foam, so I'm just making sure that it is going to stick really well, and I'm just going to put some quick dry glue on it, and I got a couple of stars in it, so I've just moved them, and then I am lining up my fabulous backing paper and just carefully sticking that down. Now the glue is still wet, so I'm going to leave that for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to put more glue on the back and then stick that to my craft layer. And I like to put glue in the corners to make sure that the paper will actually, you'll have glue touching the paper and we'll have glue touching the craft. So if any of it decides to try and fall off, it's just going to be stuck to the background permanently. So I'm going to give that a little press down, and then I'm going to press it nicely on the back. It is a bit warped where I put the glue on the back because I didn't leave it to dry before I took the ending photos, but once it had actually dried properly, it all dried through flat and it was fine, but it just looks a bit funny in the pictures. So again, I'm just gluing down. I really like the quick dry adhesive, the Scotch quick dry, it's fantastic. It is pretty much my go-to glue. I usually get it from 3M, and I usually buy about 6 or 8 bottles at a time. I go through that much of it. So finally onto the embellishments, and I've decided, triple checking, that's definitely where I want to place them. So, and I do want to 3D them up again, so I'm going to put some of that tape on and just carefully cut it so it fits. Yeah, you do want to be careful when you're making these things. You don't really want your foam and stuff to show. If you can make it so it doesn't show at all, then that's the best, I think. So I'm going to foam them up. Decided I need more foam support on that one, and give it a good press down, cut off any overhanging edges, and then stick them down too. And here we have the finished shaker in action, and you can see it shaking quite nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed my card today, and I hope you will like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks for visiting. Bye.